Welcome to Promote, Profit, Publish. I'm your host, Juliet Clark, and all of us are getting ready for the new year. Or we're either, we've done our work the last couple months or we're just starting now. So I'm really excited about today's guest because we're going to talk about something that so many small businesses are missing. But before we get into it, I want to remember to send you over to YouTube, subscribe to Superbrand Publishing, and you can see all of these over there in video. If you're a visual person and you like to actually look at the person who's being interviewed, you can go over there and see the podcast over there. Also, don't forget to go over and take the Promote, Profit, Publish quiz. You can find it at www.promoteprofitpublishquiz.com. Find out if you're really ready to publish that book. Have you done the prep work, the audience work, the work we're going to talk about today about the niching? So don't forget to go over there and check that out. So today's guest is Sara Hand, and she is the CEO and founder of Spark Growth, a multinational professional consulting company. As a visionary leader with a strong and diverse business development background, Sara is experienced across public and private sectors, industry verticals, and early stage investment. Sara finds and leverages unique value propositions and is widely recognized for fostering collaboration and driving action-focused agendas for business and community development. So welcome, Sara.
Hi, Juliet. I'm so glad to be here today.
It's great to have you. So you and I were chatting before we jumped on today, and I shared with you that I see a lot of people out, they're new entrepreneurs, and they are jumping into, I'm going to hire a marketing company to market my business. And then they're running up against a lot of failure. And I think a lot of that is because the questionnaires from the marketing company don't really relate to the fact that these people are seeking out marketing because they're not hitting the right audiences. So it's kind of this catch-22 where people are spending a lot of money. And you do a lot of surveys in private and public sectors to really get down to this. So can you talk about that a little bit and why it's so important to do this market research?
So I think the interesting part, I'll say, we actually just had a workshop here on Saturday, and the gentleman who was leading it, I've known for a very long time. He said the average person in the United States has one breast, and one, right, because they're 50% male and 50% woman. That's the average. And so data can tell us a lot of things, but having accurate data is absolutely key in identifying who you serve. And a lot of times what we find is people have a generic survey. And so if they do a survey and trying to get feedback, or they, like I said, they don't do a survey at all. They just guess, well, this is who I want to serve. And when we work with clients, what we say is it doesn't matter what you think. The marketplace rewards companies that provide value. And so if you're going to provide value, you need to connect to an end client. And so in getting really great surveys and response, we start with asking questions. So we start with an interview. So if you were one of my clients, Juliet, or somebody that I thought I was going to work with, I'd start asking you some questions, and then I'd utilize that for my survey so that then I could get the questions that I would ask would be based on understanding whether they were effective or not. And I know you have a survey platform and you work with a lot of your clients on that. Not all surveys are as effective as others. So when you start, how do you work at getting great survey results also?
So I start with the product or service or idea. And then what does success look like in those areas? And that's where we start having people not only relate to success, like I want to be successful in this area, which gets them excited about taking it. That's one of the things that a lot of people complain about is I can't get anybody to take it. So when we put it together, and there was something key you just said there, Sara, it's win-win. It's not all about, can you give me feedback? It's, can I give you feedback too?
Right. So you start with the client, and the client saying, so if you were asking me, you'd say, hey, Sarah, what does success look like? And I would say, well, success looks like this. And then you reverse engineer. And so if success looks like this, then we figure out, well, who would I need to work with to be able to have that type of success? So I think in some of the, we do a lot of community engagement. And I would say, I'll give you an example of what community engagement doesn't look like. And community engagement does not look like making a decision that you want to do something and then sending out a bunch of emails and hoping everybody likes it.
Right.
Or sending out some postcards. And so I will give you an example. Our company does some work in the smart city space. And the place where I grew up, there was an entity there that in this region, did a smart cities project. And an example of community engagement that doesn't happen well is, and they had no idea, but I did, because all my friends on Facebook who knew that I had done some smart cities work tagged me in, you know what Facebook looks like when it doesn't look good, and you have this really conversation that you don't want to be involved in at all. Mm-hmm. And people keep tagging you.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm not on anymore, but I remember those days.
Yes. And you don't want to participate. So that's what happened is this major industry partner did a smart cities project. They didn't do community engagement, and the community got all riled up. I'm like, is Big Brother watching you? Is it this, this, and this? And people who knew that I had done work in that space kept tagging me. And these people over here are like, oh yeah, we had great community engagement. I'm like, no, no, because if you saw what people were saying, they didn't know. So it was, so that's for us a lot of times in voice of customer, whether it's the community at large or whether it's something even more targeted, is really about that communication, and just sending a postcard or an email or talking to one or two people is just not enough.
So that is such a great point that you just brought. And we're kind of going to go all over the place with some of this stuff, I think, today. Mm-hmm. The tagging on Facebook, I see people do it all the time to get an influencer's attention. Mm-hmm. They're not paying attention. They have teams. Right. They're not, like, that influencer is not on there. I just had a call with somebody a couple of weeks ago who was name dropping all of these people that she talked to, all these people that she tagged. And I was like, well, why are you talking to me? Aren't you getting great results from that? And the truth was, no. Right. So tell me your honest opinion. When that happened, were you annoyed?
Very much so. And especially because it was a contentious conversation. Now, I will say I do tag people very specifically for things that I know that they are interested in. I don't do that all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's very targeted. So yesterday I posted something specific on LinkedIn, something specific to digital twinning and what virtualization and augmented reality mean in the urban planning space. And I tagged two of the city leaders who I know that are working in that area that were mentioned in the article, and our industry partner who is a part of that project. But I don't put them on everything. I tag them to things that are specific for them. And I think that's a really key piece. Like when you said about name dropping, Juliet, is one of my friends is a former Olympic ice skating champion. And she has all her contacts locked down on LinkedIn, and she's very careful, I think, in tagging it's really important to be careful of those relationships. I do a lot of work with investors, and the integrity in that relationship is I have to guard that. Yes. You know, yes. And so if you just put a list of people on there, I think that you can damage those relationships. And I know for me, I work with people all over the world. And I was in India and we were having a conversation around the table. And somebody said something about this other person over here. And I was like, oh, you should know this person. And they're like, oh, I do. Crazy. if you are in a space that has significant influence, those relationships are absolutely something you have to safeguard. If you only work in a small space, and it's not a space of influence, you can screw up, you can misbehave, you can have bad business practices, and you can go to another city, another town, and you can reopen. Not everybody may know your past, but I think, especially when you talk about publishing, when you talk about being in this area of influence, your relationships are absolutely one of the most precious things that you can have. That's how I met you.
Yeah, so that's absolutely correct. So that name, so here's some things you got. I'll give you a great example, Sarah. People that I talk to that don't hire me, and then they release their book on their own and they tag me like I was part of the process. I literally get so upset by that, because if you're out there doing a really crappy job of it and now you're tagging me all over the place, it looks like I did that work or I helped you with that work. And they don't connect it that way. They just think my audience will see it. So that's why you have to be so careful about that. Is the key word there was integrity. Like, have some integrity. Don't try to attract my audience, because I'm looking at that from a whole different side of the spectrum.
Right.
Of, oh my God, I'm not associated with that work. And you just associated me with it.
If I had a friend that's looking to publish, and they're saying, yeah, I'm really excited, I'm going to start writing my book, I would say, I might tag you or say, oh, you should talk to Juliet.
Right.
Right. But to tag somebody that hasn't published or has published and I think, so this is off topic, but you and I talked about, I had a friend, I still have this friend, but they had a very, very good position, and they wrote this book, and they quit their position after the book published because they were absolutely sure that they were going to replace the six-figure income within the first 8 months to a year by publishing their first book. And it's not as easy as that. There's a whole process. Just writing it and self-publishing. How many people have garages full of books? I think that tie that into voice of customer and really the survey stuff that you do.
Yeah, that would be odd. So what does success look like? Probably all those things we just talked about, not. So when we flip those and we ask people, so here's the thing, when we do the surveys, probably yours is very much the same, is we flip those success and we have them measure where they're at for success. So we're actually, on one hand, showing them what success looks like, and it's not tagging all those other people and not doing the work, but we're also finding out where people are at and where they need help. So I think that sort of made sense there. Is when we do those deep dives, we have something in mind, but the reason we want to do them is that idea is a guess. When we're putting something out there, just like you said, you can't just put it out there and hope people will come. That idea is a guess. And now we're testing the guess. Is there room for this? Are people excited? You were just talking about the post where nobody was excited about this. There was a perception on one side that, things were going well. And then there was a perception on the other side that that's not what people are saying. So I think that's where we try to bring this all together, is what are actually people saying and thinking, and do you have an audience here, a receptive audience?
So on that, I think what would be really interesting for me is, in the amount of people that you work with, do people come to you sometimes and go, I know people are really, really interested in this, and then when they dive into the material, do you help them kind of reframe it sometimes so that maybe they can really find their voice in where they're going?
That's such a great question. Are you interviewing me, or am I interviewing you?
Learning. This is what I do every day.
So you guys are getting a good view of how you should be doing this. So that's a great question, because it depends on the idea. If I have my ear to the ground on a lot of things, so I usually know what's relevant, what's not. in whatever is today's world. Sometimes I have to keep from rolling my eyes because I know that the idea will never come to fruition. And here's what's behind that, Sarah, and why active listening is a big part of this is ego. If someone starts a conversation with, I saved 4 lives this week, and makes it about them, and then pitches me an idea, that's much different than somebody coming to me who is an actual doctor. And this person was not a doctor. Than an actual person who comes to me and says, I'm a mental health professional and I would really like to help more people. And I think this book is the avenue to do it. What are your thoughts about messaging? There's a real difference there between separating the ego of an idea and the idea that people want to help and can. Does that make sense?
Right.
So a lot of times that's what I look. If I think that you have a good idea and the messaging's there and the topic is relevant, then yes, I want to work with you. And yes, I will be glad to help with you. If I think you're all about the ego and maybe aren't qualified to do what you're doing, then chances are I'm probably not going to help you explore that. I will discourage you from working with me. That was horrible, wasn't it?
You know what I love about that is everyone's not your prospect.
Right. Exactly.
And that's really, I think for me, my COVID story is that during this last, now we're kind of like almost 2 years, is my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer. I became a very serious caregiver. My brother was in an accident, and I have 2 companies and, I have a space and I have clients who count on me in this space to keep them open. And so I think for me, what happens when you go through those types of things in the midst of this type of environment is it really pushes you through the cheesecloth. It really gets you to say what's really important. And so while I have had prospects before that I did not work with for some reason, sometimes there are clients that I took on. It was going to be a great project or whatever. It was going to pay really well, or it was whatever. And in the last 2 years, more so, and I help clients do this, but even more so for myself, saying, what is it that I most want to do? Who do I most want to work with? How can this legacy piece, how can I do the most good, have the most impact? And getting very, very clear on how we serve in a way that other companies don't. So I'm glad that there's people that you don't work with. And I think if you work with everybody, or like one of my friends said, if everybody relates to you on all these different things, then what do you actually stand for? If you stand for everything, what actually has meaning?
Exactly. So I think I experienced something very similar to you. And the lesson I got out of it was now I set really clear boundaries and only do what I think I can do. You guys can't see it over here, but I actually have on number 3 on my goals and what my intentions, it says staying in my zone of genius. Because I find that every time I try to help somebody, and it's outside of my zone of genius, and I do this a lot of times because I want to help, that it becomes a nightmare. So you have to learn to set those really good boundaries and only do what you intend to do on that. So did you find that? It sounded like you did with the priorities and, okay, I only have time for this. So now I have to get super intentional and only take.
Right. Yeah. And trying to do and in the middle of that. So in our space, our company is an anchor client in our own co-working space. So my CARES Act dollars went to, we did a really nice remodel, and we actually expanded that part of the business. We were able to keep, I think maybe we had 15 members. I think we're at like 30 members now. We're a small co-work type space. And it's not what we do fully for a business. It's a program that we run. But that that investment into that made it easier to just manage and really helping our clients stay open. But I had to get, so in the middle of my mom being sick and all these different pieces, I hired some more people, took on some really phenomenal and equity investment, a stake in a company, and just really had to get really clear on my time. This day is a focus day. So I have focus time, free time, buffer time, really taking control of my schedule, because I would be like at my parents' house for like 10 days at a shot.
Right.
I'd be working from my computer, sitting next to my mom while she was on her bed. So when you're pushed, you say, yeah, this is really important. And you want to know what? This other stuff isn't. And I would say that ties back to like when we talk about survey and voice of customer. I have an organization that I serve, and it's called TIE. It stands for the Indus Entrepreneur. We have a chapter in Tampa. I'm in the Tampa Bay area. So TIE Tampa Bay. And I had the opportunity to lead our board in a strategy session when our new president came in earlier this year. And it's so interesting because sometimes TIE is the largest investor and entrepreneur organization in the world. And so it's very easy to say we serve entrepreneurs because we do. But our primary audience is our charter members. And our charter members are entrepreneurs, corporate executives who have been very successful. And they believe that wealth generation is good. And that if you know how to do that, there's a responsibility tied to that. And so our charter members have a belief set and they invest their time, talent, and treasure in other people to empower them. So our charter members our organization serves entrepreneurs because this is the heart. Whereas if we simply served entrepreneurs down here and we did not address the heart of our charter members, we wouldn't have them. And they're the ones who spend their time, their talent. We serve students and diverse groups. And our charter members write checks. They don't just talk about doing the right thing. They actually write checks. We did a $400,000 investment, raised money with 3 chapters in a couple of weeks, and did that a couple of months ago. And so I think that really, in the way we know our voice of customer, is we ask our members, what is it you most care about? We only have this much bandwidth. There's 63 some chapters around the world. Some chapters are huge. San Francisco, they have 250 charter members in their chapter. We're a smaller organization. So we have to get very specific on how we serve. But I think that's, whether it's your book, it's your company, knowing how you best provide value, I think that goes back to our survey.
It does. It does. Well, where can we find you if we want to find out more?
So I'm fairly easy to find. So Sara Hand, Hand, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And my company is called Spark Growth. Because for us, that's what it really is all about, is watching people grow and their companies grow and flourish.
Great. Thank you so much for being on today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Juliet. I enjoyed it.